The duty of a hero. In the heart of the chaotic uprising led by the Cyclaean in the town of Urdaneta, Alfredo's plans had crumbled into tragedy. Now, Eric found himself trapped in a dire situation, forced to make an impossible choice deciding who would live and who would die due to General Slasher's ruthless tactics to secure victory. Two massive spears, forged from countless blades, hovered menacingly above Slasher, each aimed in a different direction. The general intended to unleash them simultaneously, one toward Eric and Teog, the other toward the innocent people inside the municipal building. "I'm begging you, General, let's end this senseless fight. Join us in building a better future, for the sake of everyone," Eric pleaded, his voice steady but laced with urgency. Eric made one last attempt to reason with the general, proposing a truce with the rebels and a united effort to forge a new Philippines. He shared his vision for a reborn nation, one where justice and equality could prevail. But instead of listening, Slasher let out a mocking laugh, sneering at Eric's words and hurling insults at the Filipino people, calling them lowly natives and Indios. "Before you can call yourself a hero, you need to understand one truth: there's no such thing as true righteousness in this world. You act based on what you believe is right, but unfortunately, that clashes with my beliefs. The only way to prove whose conviction is correct is to see who's left standing in the end," Slasher declared, his voice dripping with arrogance. Eric could hardly believe the general's words. To Slasher, the conflict was nothing more than a game of victory, where he could twist others' beliefs to suit his desires, manipulating both people and the law as if they were pawns in his hands. "You've lost your mind," Eric said, his tone heavy with dismay. Amid the tension, Teog struggled to rise to his feet. He understood the perilous situation Eric was in, forced to protect him from Slasher's wrath. Determined not to be a burden to his friend, Teog wanted to stand and fight alongside him, despite his body trembling from weakness and the wounds he had sustained. With shaking limbs, Teog managed to stand and took slow, deliberate steps toward Eric. He placed a hand on Eric's shoulder, gently pushing him aside to clear a path, urging him to leave the spot. "Wait, what are you doing, Alfredo?" Eric asked, startled by his friend's sudden movement. "You don't need to worry about the life of a criminal like me, Eric. If you want to be a true hero, you must learn to weigh what's truly important," Teog replied, his voice tinged with resignation. His strength faltered, and Teog's legs gave out, forcing him to his knees. Eric rushed to his side to help, but instead of accepting assistance, Teog shouted at him, pushing him away. "Go, Eric. Save the people in the building and let me face Slasher alone," Teog yelled, his resolve unshakable. Teog wanted Eric to leave him behind, to atone for his sins on his own. Eric could see that Alfredo had no strength left to fight. There was barely a flicker of energy left in him. Doubt gnawed at Eric. He feared Alfredo wouldn't survive a confrontation with Slasher. Alfredo paused in his struggle to move forward, a bitter smile crossing his lips. He realized that by doing this, he was choosing to die so that the Spaniards in the building might live, a choice that contradicted the very ideals he had fought for from the beginning. Yet, deep down, he knew this wasn't about his own cause anymore. It was about helping his friend, who sought to be a beacon of hope for those in need. Alfredo knew he wasn't a noble man, but as he gazed at his blood-stained hands, he thought that if he had one final act to offer his country, it would be to help his friend become the hero the nation needed. In that moment, Teog spoke of his need to die for the Filipino people, acknowledging the sins he had committed. He understood that if a leader of the rebellion like him survived, the Spaniards might resort to desperate measures, endangering more innocent Filipinos in their quest to crush the Cyclaean and its supporters. "I won't let you die, Alfredo. I can't. Please," Eric pleaded, his voice cracking with pain. Teog turned to face Eric and took a step closer. He spoke firmly, explaining that this was necessary for their shared beliefs and for his role as a hero to the Filipino people. He was resolved to accept the just punishment for his crimes. "You don't have to die," There's another way. Eric countered, tears beginning to stream down his face. I can't bear the thought of you dying and leaving me behind. He added, his heart heavy with anguish. Eric's perspective. I can't fathom why it has come to this. What's so wrong with staying alive? I don't understand why, despite my desperate efforts to save him from death, Alfredo is willingly walking toward it, ready to embrace his fate. The pain in my heart is unbearable right now. I can't even imagine how I'll cope with losing a dear friend like Alfredo. The moment I step away from this spot, I know I'll never be with him again. I'll never see him for the rest of my life. Please, Alfredo. I whispered in my mind, my plea echoing with desperation. Alfredo didn't respond, he only looked at me, his gaze steady. I waited for any words to come from his lips, a single selfish plea that he wanted to live. But he gave me nothing, no answer, no hope. I don't know if Alfredo is even thinking about his own situation, but in that moment, I began to resolve in my mind to choose his life over others. Not because of some calculated value of who should live or die, but because of my selfish desire to keep my one true friend by my side. Please, Alfredo, tell me you want to live. I begged, my voice trembling with emotion. But instead of answering, he slowly approached me, his head bowed, and softly said, do everything you can to save them. Do everything to become great. Become a true hero. I couldn't heed his words, overwhelmed by the storm of emotions raging within me. Our shared memories meant more to me now, the things I stood to lose, the things I needed most. I'll save you, Alfredo. No matter how many times I fail, I'll keep trying to save you. I said, my voice filled with determination. As I spoke, memories flooded my mind, times we played and laughed together in the camp, fleeting moments that held deep meaning for me, now weighing heavily on my heart in this moment of crisis. I won't grow tired, and I won't lose hope. I'll keep rising and trying again. Please, Alfredo, tell me this isn't the end. Let me save you. I said, tears streaming down my face. End of perspective. Alfredo couldn't answer Eric's pleas, consumed by the same sorrow that gripped them both in that moment. Like Eric, Alfredo longed to play with his friend again, to spend a lifetime by his side if he could. But he knew there was no turning back. He had to bring an end to the rebellion he had started. Teog sensed that Eric was being swept away by his emotions, and he feared that if Eric saw any sign of his desire to live or fear of death, his friend might make reckless decisions that would betray his mission. For a few moments, silence enveloped the area as the two stood face to face. Teog gently cupped Eric's cheek, wiping away the tears that flowed from his eyes. I'll never forget the times we shared. Teog said softly. Suddenly, he pressed his forehead against Eric's, their faces so close they could feel each other's breath. They fell silent again, sensing each other's emotions through the mystical energy that enveloped them, a connection akin to that of ethereal spirits. I don't want to lose you. Eric said, his voice heavy with sadness. I won't truly be gone. As long as the flame of your noble heart burns to save others, I'll remain in your heart and mind. Teog replied swiftly. I can't be a hero on my own. I don't know what I'll do without you. Please. Eric said, his voice breaking as he fought back sobs. Don't worry, everything will be all right. Teog responded gently, a faint smile gracing his lips. In that moment, Eric broke into tears again. He knew things would never be all right if his friend died, but it seemed there was nothing more he could do to change Alfredo's mind. Alfredo's smile seemed to say that Eric should accept what was to come and move forward with his life. Teog released Eric and stepped back to create distance between them. There was no trace of fear on his face, and in that moment, he made a final request, a last favor from his friend. I want you to promise me that you'll save the Filipino people as their hero and build a nation where everyone is treated with fairness. He said. Eric couldn't bring himself to speak, he simply nodded in response. He didn't want to hear Alfredo's words, which sounded like a goodbye, but he knew he had no choice but to agree. A faint blue aura began to emanate from Taeyog's body, merging with Eric. This energy stemmed from Taeyog's unwavering faith in Eric, his acceptance of Eric's role as a hero, and his belief that Eric could save countless lives. At that moment, General Slasher released the two massive spears, sending them hurtling in both directions. "I'm sorry, Eric, and thank you for everything," Taeyog said with a smile as he turned away. Eric sprinted from where they stood, racing to intercept the spear aimed at the people in the building. With all his strength, he leaped to reach its trajectory. His feet skidded across the ground as he stopped directly in front of the colossal spear, bracing himself for an attack. Clutching his red sword, he was once again enveloped in a blue aura. The energy swirled around him like a whirlwind, sweeping away debris in its wake. As the power gathered in the blade of his sword, images flashed through Eric's mind, visions of the people he needed to save, including the loved ones he still wished to protect. "I believe every person has the right to choose their own destiny, and no one should dictate their death simply for the selfish desire to succeed. I am the chosen of Ifugo, wielding the entrusted power of the deity Sid Alwa and the faith of the people who believe in me as their hero. I will protect them until my last breath," he shouted, his voice resonating with conviction. With all his might, he swung his sword through the air, unleashing a devastating surge of power, just as he had done before. "Mighty Faith Slash!" he roared. Once again, the blinding light consumed everything in its path. The massive spear aimed at the building dissolved under the energy's force, and the light surged forward, obliterating Slasher where he stood. Slasher screamed as the light consumed him. At the same moment Eric unleashed his attack. The second spear struck Taeyog from the opposite direction. It shattered the crystal on his chest, piercing his body with countless blades. The protective power of his deity could no longer shield him. Taeyog remained standing, resolute, even as the spear of swords impaled him. Moments later, the blades began to dissolve like crumbling ice, a consequence of Slasher's demise. Blood flowed from Taeyog's wounds as the armor encasing his body shattered. Soon, his form reverted to that of an ordinary human, his energy completely depleted. Slowly, Alfredo sank to his knees, his arms losing strength. In his final moments, he turned his head toward Eric, whispering a faint thank you. Meanwhile, Eric's attack triggered a massive explosion, the shockwave causing destruction that reached the buildings across the street. Thick smoke blanketed the area in the aftermath, concealing a gaping crater that split the street 9 feet deep and 3 meters wide. After unleashing his devastating attack, Eric felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. His body collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by exhaustion and the complete depletion of his energy. He lay there, whispering the name of the friend he longed to see. Alfredo. Seconds later, his eyes fluttered shut, and he lost consciousness. As he fell into darkness, his form reverted to that of a normal human, the presence of the deity within him fading entirely. The Cyclaean rebellion against Spanish rule in the town of Urdaneta, Pangasinan, had finally come to a tragic end. That day became a somber one for all, serving as a poignant lesson for the townspeople. In the aftermath, over 300 rebels, including Alfredo, were reported dead, along with more than 500 Spaniards and Filipinos caught in the crossfire. Over 300 policemen perished in the fighting, and an estimated 3,000 civilians were injured during the attack. Among the casualties were the Spanish mayor of Urdaneta and, it was believed, the province's governor-general, General Slasher, whose body was never found after the explosion. Days later, the uprising in Urdaneta became a major news story, drawing intense media attention, particularly due to a video captured by an anonymous individual inside the municipal building during the conflict. The footage, which showcased key moments of the battle, gripped the nation's attention. The anonymous man who recorded it dubbed the mysterious hero Ifugo, proclaiming him the one who would change the Philippines and build a new nation. The video captured Ifugo's confrontation with the Spaniards, explaining why the rebels had risen up, as well as his emotional exchange with Alfredo, where he spoke of his vision for a new Philippines, one that would serve both Filipinos and Spaniards living in the country. Despite the Spaniards' efforts to suppress the spread of the news and video, their attempts proved futile in the face of the internet's reach in the modern age. People from all walks of life watched the footage, sparking a range of opinions. As expected, many government officials were outraged and issued a manhunt for the mysterious chosen one, Ifugo. Yet, despite this, many Filipinos rejoiced, hopeful for the change he represented. Various groups, including other rebels scattered across the country, were divided on the idea of unity. Days later, as the video continued to spread, a man sat alone in a hidden room in the basement of an old building, watching the footage of the hero named Ifugo. This is nonsense. How can this be a new Philippines if the Spaniards remain among us? Fool! He's ruining my plans. The man muttered, his voice thick with frustration as he sat in front of the television. The nation can't achieve true change without gaining freedom from these foreigners. He added, slamming his fist on the table in anger. A crimson smoke filled the room, emanating from his body. The man had black hair with streaks of red, and he wore a black hat emblazoned with a K at the top, the emblem of his group. A half-mask adorned his face, decorated with 3 stars. His muscular frame was clad in a fitted suit, bearing the symbol of his organization on his chest. This man was a revolutionary, branded a rebel by the government, and the leader of the KASARINLAN Novel, a group of Filipinos in Manila and nearby areas fighting against Spanish rule in the nation's capital. He was the chosen of Manila, known as Supremo, now hailed as a new hero of the Filipino people. Prepare yourself, Ifugo, he said ominously, his voice laced with resolve. End.